Morning by morning, I wake up to find the power and the comfort of God's hand in mine. Season by season, I watch Him amazed in awe of the mystery of His perfect ways. All I am need of, His hand will provide. He's always been faithful to me. He's always been faithful to me.
Hi, Pastor Jeff here. Just reading Lamentations chapter 3, verse 23. Your compassions, they are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. That is the theme to our anniversary celebration. I want to welcome everyone to our 50th anniversary here at St. Mark's Lutheran. Jesus Christ is risen, and He lives and He reigns at God's right hand, and His life pervades the lives of His people here at St. Mark's. For 50 years, the gospel of Jesus Christ, His crucifixion, His resurrection, His ascension to God's right hand, His life lived through His people, His body, the church. We have been preaching and proclaiming that here at St. Mark's in so many ways through word and sacrament ministry. It has been 50 years. 50 years is a long time. Not for God, but for us. And when you think of the fact that we are sinners and all the difficulties sinners get themselves into, it is an act of God's pure, unadulterated grace when a church family lasts for 50 years and works to spread the gospel faithfully in their community for 50 years. Give praise and thanks to God for His faithfulness through His Son, Jesus Christ, giving each of us His Holy Spirit so that the fruits of love and joy, peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control rule and reign in the hearts and the lives of the people here in God's family at St. Mark's. Take care.
I'm Meg Ellis, and I live right across the road from the church, which was very convenient because I always wanted to live close to a church, because when I was a girl in England, I was right close to my church there, and I was just loved it because I could just go to the church whenever I felt like it, and because I also belonged to the church school. So when I came to Canada, I was looking for a church, and it just happened that when I first came to this area, we were looking for a house, and just at this time they were building this church of St. Mark's, and right across the road from it was, what do you think, an empty house, all ready to have people come in it.
My name is Armin Brewer, and I've been a member here since 1958. And actually the first service we attended was Christmas Day 1958, and we were taken into membership very shortly after.
Brian, who you probably all know, came here for nursery school. He had become crippled, and just when Darlene was born, and I couldn't cope with everything. So a friend of ours, Alan A. Martin, who was the chairman of education, spoke to Margaret Cross, who had this nursery school, and she accepted Brian into the nursery school to give me a break. That was long before anyone ever heard of integration. Well, then you had to bring your children and take them home, like pick them up. And so in turn, I had to come with Darlene in the car, and then in turn with Lori in the car. So because this nursery school was so highly recommended, both Darlene and Lori came here. And it was Lori who eventually said she'd like to go to her church with her pastor. And so I said to Arnold, let's find out what these Lutherans are about. And so we joined in, what year?
March of 1967.
Okay, March 1967. We became official members of this church.
My name is Betty Nikolajchuk, and I have been coming to St. Mark's since about 1966. I came with my husband and my two children, David and Debbie. After I came, I went to Bible study in Sunday mornings while the children went to Sunday school.
Okay, I'm Robert Bauer. I joined St. Mark's in 1965. Started attending as a Sunday school student, and then a couple of years later in confirmation class.
Hello, I'm Charlene Haycock, and through the marriage of my husband Jack in December of '76, I became affiliated with the Lutheran Church, and under circumstances I was led here on December the 3rd, 1978 on a very blizzardy day, and I was heading for Christ our King and got the wrong church, but the people at St. Mark's very kindly invited me to worship with them and said that I could go to Christ our King any other time. So anyhow, when I heard Pastor Merchant preach Christ Crucified, of course, I was very taken in by that. And then, of course, he made his house call. And
I'm Doris Smy, and I arrived at St. Mark's 34 years ago from Montreal. The first couple of Sundays I went to another church, another Lutheran church, and I could not get anyone to speak to me. So I was so upset, and I went home, and my husband said, look, I'm taking you to St. Mark's, and it so happened that Pastor Schussler was here having a meeting. That was in 1971. And he said, come next Sunday, I won't tell anyone you're coming, but you'll notice a difference. And it was like day and night. Everyone welcomed me, everyone was so wonderful that, of course, I would never ever leave.
I can't remember the exact year, but we were taking the bus to the city, to St. John's, and in the wintertime it was pretty rough for the children. So we talked to Pastor Borneman, and he said to us, if you can get 5 to 6 people together here in Port Credit, I'll come out and we'll start the church. And that was started at
in 53.
in the 53, I think the date was. And it was started in the school up at the corner of number 10 here and the Queen Elizabeth. And we were in there, how many years were we there?
Until 56, 57, 56 this church was built.
Yeah.
And then 57 was the
Yeah,
first
and then-
services were held.
My name is Elaine Warren. My husband and I, my husband Donald and I, came here in 1958 to St. Mark's. At the time, my husband was not attending church, at least prior to our coming, but our daughter Carol was going to nursery school. She was 3 years old. And as a result of that, my husband got to know Pastor Arnie Christo. And Pastor Arnie and my husband spent many Sunday afternoons together talking. And as a result of those visits together, we joined St. Mark's in 1958.
Why did you join St. Mark's?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. When we moved to this area, we were looking at different churches. We had come from a Presbyterian church in Bramalea, and we went to different churches, and it wasn't until one Sunday that Milton came to this church, and he ran into a lady. Her name is Miss Elaine Warren. She came back recently to our church, And she said to Milton what the church meant to her, and it was so refreshing to us.
I'm Ruth Patterson. My first introduction to St. Mark's occurred on the street of Hanover. Don's work was to be in Toronto when we were going to live in Port Credit. I was approached by Victor and Shirley Wagner, who told me about this Lutheran congregation that was organizing in Port Credit. Because leaving the only town I had lived in was very traumatic, it was comforting to know there would be such a place near where we were to live. The second Sunday after moving, we went to the Queen Elizabeth School and met the people that we would be associated with for many years. Some of those fellow Christians became lifelong and very dear friends.
Well, I guess the first thing is to say when we got started at the church would be in the late fall of '56 when we joined the congregation. At the old schoolhouse that used to be where the provincial police station is now. At the
Yeah, it was called Queen Elizabeth School.
At the corner of Queenie and Highway 10. And it was, a few weeks later perhaps that we were actually at our first service at the present building.
Hi, I'm Bruce Brown, my lovely wife Ino. We moved here from Kingston in 1980. We looked at Christ our King and then decided that St. Mark's was the church for us, and we started worshiping here around September of 1980 with Neville Merchant.
Hi, my name is Chris Hansen. I first came to the Church of St. Mark's back in 1957 or early 58. It was shortly after I had come to Canada. Actually, Pastor Christo came to my door in Long Branch where we lived, knocked on the door and told me who he was and invited me to come to church. And I wasn't really interested in church. And I gave him a song and a dance or a lie or whatever you want to call it. I said I was already a member of the Danish Lutheran Church in Toronto. That was a big lie because I didn't even know where that church was. However, then a young couple moved in to the same apartment where we lived, and his name was Dick Younghouse and his wife Ulla. And Dick was a staunch Lutheran from St. Louis. And he got hold of me and talked to me, and finally, after many battles about faith and what have you, I agreed to be polite and go to church with him. Well, that was the biggest surprise in my life, because here at St. Mark's, I saw enthusiastic people, and I was welcomed, and there were Sunday school teachers and kids all over the place, and Pastor Christo.
My name is Vicki Boucher, but when I joined St. Mark's in 1967, it was Vicki Gibbard. I'm the oldest daughter of the Gibbard family, and I joined with my parents. I was a couple of years older than the confirmation class at that time, so Pastor graciously allowed me to become confirmed with the adult confirmation class, which I was very grateful for. So I joined St. Mark's. My confirmation date was in March of 1967.
So the thing was how to get this font made. Well, I decided, and I'm sure a lot of people thought that was the only thing to do, was to have the woodwork exactly the same as the font, as the altar was, with the scoops out of it. So I designed the woodwork that way,